finance, we have we'll just continue.
Yeah, I'll just say, include my superintendent's report.
All right.
Yeah.
Congratulations to all the recipients tonight. That was really wonderful, really nice presentation in the gym, in the cafeteria. Okay, we are now open to the public, limited to action items on the agenda. Okay. For correspondence, we had an email from FC regarding transfer and an email from AS regarding recognition. Next, can I get a motion to adopt should I ask if we have anyone online? I'm sorry.
There's nobody online.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt 1.01 to 1.02?
So move Beth. Carolyn, second. Second Carolyn.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. DePinto,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Bogorski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Social.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to the approval of minutes, can we get a motion to adopt 2.01 to 2.02?
So move Beth. Second Carolyn.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. DePinto,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopes,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Bogorski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Social.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to finance and facilities, can we get a motion to adopt 3.01 to 3.10?
So move Beth.
We'll do that right after, I think the motion.
Motion.
First and then the
Report, yep.
committee, yeah.
Second Carolyn.
Okay, and we do have a committee report. Thank you, Mr.
Finance Committee met on Friday, May 10th at 8:30 a.m. The first item we discussed was the potential referendum and expiring debt. Presentation from Anthony Solomine, attorney at Wilentz, Goldman and Spitzer. Anthony Solomine provided a summary of the referendum process. Since our district has debt of approximately $2 million per year that will expire in 2025, we may want to consider a potential referendum to present to the voters next year. We will continue to discuss this over the next several months. Suggested timelines, if proceeds, is now through December 2024, compile construction projects for inclusion in referendum. Item 2 was January through February 2025, architect drafts required paperwork for state submittals. March through August 2025, architect and financial advisors prepare back-end paperwork for referendum, public campaign for vote. And September of 2025, or December, January, March, and November, referendum will be on the ballot. Preschool expansion, ROD grant. The committee agreed to apply for the ROD, regular operating district grant, to support preschool expansion. We would be eligible to apply for approximately $500,000, which could possibly help fund upgrades at district preschool locations. The third item we discussed was summer 2024 capital projects. 2023-2024 ROD grant was for the HVAC installation scheduled for RMS gym, and this will be completed the end of June. For the RMS main office, the roof initial kickoff meeting was held. Recurring construction meetings will be bi-weekly in June. General construction, HVAC, same as above, all set to begin at the end of school year. Furniture design meetings with main office staff ongoing, budget finalized. Logistics moves, preparation for September 2024 being implemented, and we discussed the communications plan. RMS LED Classroom lighting, work scheduled will also be completed at the end of the school year. IT switch and access point project, bid approved, 40% reimbursed by federal funds, scheduled for upgrade equipment. First responder radio enhancement equipment ordered by vendor, kickoff meeting soon. Private preschool providers, new classrooms, a total of 7. The purchase orders were created and work was scheduled. For the fourth item we discussed was the 2024-2025 rates. Substitutes and surrounding area, the committee agreed to keep substitute rate the same as last year at $125 per day. The benefits waiting period will be 90 days instead of 60 days. Non-staff tuition rate of $4,200 in 2023-2024 will increase to $4,500 in 2024-2025. Preschool rate will stay the same as non-staff tuition rate. This will be for an employee's child to attend our preschool as a tuition student. We discussed the prescriptions transition update that was tabled, finance agenda items and bill list, the preschool expansion, aid transfers, transportation agreements, Lowe's donation, child assault prevention grant, which was $3,500, RTEA sidebar, the new assistant principal for RMS, construction project vendor resolutions, if any, and the semi-COI for June 11th, Sustainable Jersey, auction and disposal. Next meeting is planned for July 18th at 9:30 a.m. And the August date is, it was August 29th, right? We decided on August 29th at 8:30 a.m. Tentative topics will be solar, referendum, and capital projects.
Thank you, Ms. DePinto. Any questions or comments at all regarding those minutes? Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto.
Yes.
Ms. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Rose.
Yes.
Mr. Peach.
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski.
Yes.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Susiel.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to education technology. Can we get a motion to adopt 4.01 to 4.10?
So move that. Second, Carolyn.
We do not have a committee report this time. So does anyone have any questions about anything on the agenda? Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto.
Yes.
Ms. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Rose.
Yes.
Mr. Peach.
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski.
Yes.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Wolf.
Yeah.
Dr. Susiel.
Yes.
Passes.
Moving on to personnel, can we get a motion to adopt 5.01 to 5.11?
So move Jennifer. Second, Carolyn.
And not a committee report as well, correct. Does anyone have any questions regarding what's on the agenda? What's on? Oh, okay. Can we get a roll call, please?
Ms. DePinto.
Yes.
Ms. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Rose.
Yes.
Mr. Peach.
Yes.
Ms. Bogorski.
Yes.
Ms. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Susiel.
Yes.
Passes.
Dr. Susiel, before we move on to communication, can I make one announcement to the board, please? So tonight, what I would like to do is introduce Mrs. Jennifer Mooney as the new assistant principal of Reddington Middle School. This is Mrs. Mooney. She's due to start July 1st, 2024. Mrs. Mooney comes to us as a current preschool teacher at White House School, but prior to her arrival here this past January, she taught 5th grade in intervention in the Clifton Public Schools. As the board may know, the assistant principal search involves a process with a round of screening interviews, followed by a more in-depth interview with an advisory committee made up of teachers, administrators, and parents. And then after the advisory, the process included a presentation along with a few interview questions from a small group, including a board member, the superintendent, and the RMS principal. It was during this step in the process that Jen really stood out. We asked her to prepare a presentation where she would introduce herself to the community, and her first slide said she is 3 words: passionate, approachable, and dependable. When I think back to the surveys that we administer to parents and the staff about what they'd like to see in an administrator, these words come up consistently. Throughout the process, Jen demonstrated that she embodies these three characteristics and more. She's dedicated and thoughtful educator who will certainly, contribute greatly to the administrative team. Tonight we welcome Jen and her family who live here in Reddington, as we just appointed you just moments ago as the assistant principal of RMS. Congratulations, Jen.
Dr.
part before Jen speaks. I really
You steal the show every time.
Hello! Brought Jen into the district. I am losing her as my preschool person. However, I am so happy to be working with you in a different capacity. But please note, I brought her in. I will now sit down.
I think Mr.
Not to be outdone, not to be outdone. I am so thrilled to have Jen as the newest Viking here at Reddington Middle School. Jen, we are so honored that you're going to be part of the Reddington Middle School family. Thank you, Jen.
You.
And now, Thursday.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you. I am so excited, Dr. Hart, Mr. Charleston, the Board of Education. You know,
And Mrs. Beagle.
I was getting there.
It's okay if you weren't, Jen. It's all right.
You know, I came to Reddington, and I just knew that I had to work here. So I started in preschool, and you know what? It's been amazing, but sorry, Stacey. I am so looking forward to moving on to be with the middle schoolers. That's where my heart truly is. I knew instantly upon moving here and only the few short months that I've been working here that I found my home. So I look forward to this journey, and I can't wait to work with Mr. Charleston and meet the rest of the staff and students. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
No.
Jen, you're also welcome to stay. Everybody's welcome to stay, but congratulations.
Thank you.
It's great.
Congratulations as well, Mrs. Mooney.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Moving on to communication. Can we get a motion to adopt 6.01?
So move Beth. Second Carolyn.
And we have a committee report. Mr. Teach?
Yes, the committee met on May 7th. We began with a Q&A session with Strauss Esme. And this is the firm that advises the district on policies. Sona Castro and Pete Solano from Strauss Esme. And they give us background about how they track new legislation and changes in the administrative code, and then write policies for school districts that are impacted by the changes. On the subject of pronouns, Mr. DeCastro stated that for the last 2 years, the state has been making an effort to eliminate gendered pronouns in statutes and regulations. He specifically mentioned that the regulations for managing for equity in education are intended to eliminate gendered pronouns. In response to questioning, Mr. DeCastro noted he did not think districts were prevented from having gendered pronouns in their policies, or that they would face any legal exposure if they did not eliminate gendered pronouns for the code. At the same time, he recommended that to be on the safe side, districts should fully align themselves with any changes to the code. Next, we discussed the alert from Strauss Esme on managing equity in education. There are 2 policies that were held over from the last meeting. The first is policy 1530, equal employment opportunities. And there was a discussion about the portion of the policy which states that the district can use hiring practices which correct or prevent imbalances based on race or other protected categories. The second policy held over is policy 2260, equity in school and classroom practices. And here there was a discussion about the provisions which use the term, quote, all sexes, unquote, in place of, quote, both genders, unquote. Strauss Esme mentioned that the state's use of the phrase all sexes in place of both genders was intentional, as the word gender is not a protected category under the law against discrimination, which instead uses the categories sex and gender expression or identity. Strauss Esme also mentioned that while they recommend that we align our policies closely with the code, they did not think there would be any legal exposure if the board changed this to read both sexes instead of all sexes. Ultimately, no consensus was reached by the committee on these issues, and it was instead agreed that these two policies would be brought to the full board for discussion. Next, we discussed 6 other policies that are going to be brought up. They're on the agenda tonight for first reading. And the main reason for the revisions to these policies is that they remove the list of protected categories and replace it with the expanded list as defined in the code. The first policy, 5570, sportsmanship, and it's been updated to align with the rules and bylaws of the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association, including provisions for determining unsportsmanlike conduct. Next policy, 5841, addresses secret societies, and these are organizations that are not open to all students, and they're actually prohibited by statute, and so it's recommended that we have a policy. Next policy, 5842, equal access of student organizations. This has been revised to address the degree of participation that staff can have with student organizations under a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision. Next, policy and regulation 7610, having to do with vandalism. This has been updated per statute, including requiring students committing acts of graffiti to pay restitution, perform community service, remove the graffiti. It also makes the parents of any minor damaging school property liable for damages. Policy 9323, notification of juvenile offender case disposition. And this has been updated to align with statutes which govern how schools gain access to juvenile justice proceedings when necessary. Next, we discussed abolishing policy 5755, which can be abolished. We no longer have a need for this policy once the other policies are passed. Next, we discussed the RMS main office communications plan. There's going to be a main office renovation, which will take place this summer and continue into the fall at our RMS. There will be communications from Dr. Hart about the project, and additionally, Mr. Charleston will send out a more detailed letter, including day-to-day impact on students. And Mr. Baum mentioned that there will be no major impact on students as construction will be sealed off, and most of the heavy construction work will take place in the summer. Next, we discussed advocacy for preschool special ed. The committee discussed this has to do with the discrepancy in funding for special ed students in our preschool program. The district is prohibited from using the state's preschool funding on special ed students and forcing us to use our own budget instead. So the district is discussing this with state officials to address the discrepancy. And also for advocacy on the QSAC process, the committee discussed what will likely be revisions to the QSAC process, and that Hunterdon County superintendents are working with the state on this issue. So the agenda items tonight are policies 5570, 5841, 5842, 7610, 9323. And we scheduled our next meeting. Well, I think we've changed this, right? It's June, now it's going to be June 19th at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Does anyone have any, questions or comments regarding what's in these minutes?
Quick question for the abolished policy 5755. We don't have that on our agenda tonight. Is that going to be held for a later meeting?
That's being held because that policy, the policies 1523 and 2260, which are the policies that we held and did not put on the agenda tonight, would replace that policy. So I don't want to abolish a policy until we have an appropriate replacement. I would recommend that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I had a question for number 1. I had looked up the code and I don't see anything on there that discusses gendered pronouns. So is it that the code hasn't been updated? I don't know what was fully discussed.
He said that the gentleman from Strauss Estimate, the way I understood, they said it was the regulations for managing for equity in education. And this is It's chapter 7, NJAC 6A:7. And that was the one that they said, I guess, led to the elimination of pronouns. I asked a follow-up question of them, I haven't heard back yet, because I didn't see it.
It was in the, if you took a look at the attachment that I put in the documents, there was a comment period. When code is updated, there's a comment period that the public can comment and ask questions about updates to administrative code. And in the comment period, the public noticed that gendered pronouns were removed and non-gendered pronouns were placed there. And some of the questions, when code is being updated, some of the questions have revolved around the change in use of those pronouns. So when code is being updated, they are changing from gendered pronouns to non-gendered pronouns, from he, she to they. When we adopt policy, policy ultimately comes from code. Hence the updates in policy.
Okay, but the code doesn't discuss, this code specifically that's mentioned in the minutes doesn't discuss anything about gender pronouns. So that's where I'm kind of confused. I don't know if anybody looked up that code, but it doesn't.
I've asked the question, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I took it as being the state was pushing for it for the last couple of years. Generally, I haven't been able to find anything that says, this is what we're doing, or this is what you have to do. And I'd asked them, I thought I might get a response before tonight. I'd asked them.
I do have a response, I just haven't reviewed it. That's why I haven't
okay.
presented it.
Oh,
That's all. I haven't reviewed
okay.
it in any level of detail, but I do have it.
I don't know if you want to have a discussion now on this or wait till, do
Yeah,
you want to wait until we?
okay, so, hold on, let me look at a document here. So what I have is, what I shared with the committee was NJAC 6A:7. There are specific parts of that subsections, like 1.1A, 1.1A specifically, where revisions to the code that has happened and gender pronouns are removed and gender non-binary or they is put in place. When the code was, the document that Strauss gave us was when the code was changed, the removal of those pronouns received questions from the public. And then what I put in the document was the answers to the questions. So when code is updated now, administrative code is updated now, they're removing he, she, and putting they in code. Our policy is dictated by code. So changes in code mean changes in policy. So then when Strauss goes to update our policy, they're following the same pattern that is happening in the code. So they're moving from he, she, and replacing it with they. So when we are presented with policies in the policy committee, we're seeing a strike through of he, she, and the replacement of they, them. Does that answer your question, Justina? It's not, I think you're right, it's not specifically in that code, but in other code as it gets changed, that's where we see the revision.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to find a specific example for you.
Okay, because I have the code, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's still under discussion with the committee, correct? That policy?
Well, we're bringing it to the board. We couldn't reach a consensus on it.
And I think the question before the board is, are we gonna be consistent with code and adopt the recommendations from Strauss? Or would the board like to see some other revision to the policies happen?
Does anyone have any thoughts or comments about it?
I think someone asked the question.
Oh, yeah.
I can't read from here.
Oh, I'm supposed to read this, right?
But it's
No,
not-
not,
Oh, it's
you have to
not.
wait till
Oh,
we
okay.
have the public.
Oh, sorry.
Let me say a couple things. look, this is a divisive issue. You know, we've spending probably more time on it than we should, but I don't quite understand why the state's pushing it. I think, you know, I think we should treat everyone with respect. I think any transgender children or non-binary children in the district, they should be given support, they should be treated with respect. You know, any child struggling with gender dysphoria, and I've said I have no problem, you know, with teachers or administrators, you know, calling students by, you know, using whatever names they want or calling them, using whatever pronouns. I don't have any problem with that. You know, I'll call people what they want to be called. But I have to say, I just think it's extreme to just change all of our policies. You know, forbid the use of any gender language or gender pronouns. You know, I was looking through the one policy that we held over on equity. You know, on page, look on page 3 of the 2260, equity in school. You know, they take out the phrase male and female students. You know, and you know, as Dr. Hart mentioned, that they're taking out, you know, we're not allowed to say he and she and her and him. And I think it's extreme. I think you can treat everyone respectfully, individually, without having to, you know, basically forbid the use of gendered language for, you know, for students that have to be less than 1% or 0.1% of the population. And I think it's divisive. I think it upsets families that don't, you know, that want to have the gendered pronouns. So they're just kind of sort of pitting people against each other. And I don't like, you know, I've said, they make changes that are then grammatically incorrect. And we're told, well, okay, we're just going to do away with the rules of grammar because, you know, because the advocacy group is telling the state this is what they have to do. I haven't seen anything. Justina's comment, I haven't seen anything in the code, you know, for the source of it. Is there an expert saying it? Is it an organization or what's driving it? And I just think I just think it's wrong for the Department of Ed to be doing this. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Randy. Mr. Peach, sorry. Does anyone else have any comment that they'd like to add to this at all?
Something, yeah. I don't know if we need this. So being part of the policy discussion with the attorneys, I think was really helpful because, you know, we've been discussing this over several months in policy and how to address this. And the attorneys who we pay to write policy for us, you know, basically said, we take statute, we put it into an exact policy, regardless of their personal opinions. You know, they said they write policy for over 500 districts in the state of New Jersey. It's written to completely align with what the state wants to see. And, you know, the safest, their recommendation and the safest thing to do for a liability standpoint for our district is to follow their recommendation and adopt it with the language that they provide that comes directly from the state. So just wanted to provide that perspective.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anyone else want to add anything?
I guess I'm just looking at it from like a consistency standpoint. You know, we're not seeing the changes throughout the district, in our curriculum, in the classrooms, in the buildings, in our, you know, and then to then have it in our policies, that's where, you know, I'm looking at it from where I just think it should be consistent. My understanding is that it's not in the code, but it's the way that they're writing the language and that we should mirror their language.
Yeah.
So there's nothing saying you have to do this. They're just saying this is how we're writing it now and you should mirror this. So, you know, I think that's where the confusion's coming in. Like it's not written where we have to do this. It's they're telling us, we're writing it this way, you should write, just accept it and write it this way, which to me, it's inconsistent with us as a district. So that's where I'm looking at it from.
Thank you, Mrs. Pinto.
Sure.
Anyone else? I have a couple comments I'd like to add. A couple things. First of all, I apologize. Go ahead, did you want? Okay. Honestly, Ms. Randy, I appreciate, your position on that. And I know you guys have given it a lot of thought and policy. But a couple of things. One, stress estimate is the number one place where like you mentioned, I didn't know there was 500, doesn't surprise me. Out of a little over 600 districts in the state, over 500 of them use stress estimate. So this is something that's not new to them. And to go against them, I think would be the wrong decision for a couple of reasons. One, it just takes like one person to object, and then now we have more legal fees that we're gonna have to incur for whatever reason. But as far as, I agree with you, but it doesn't mean that we eliminate he, her, she, him, it doesn't mean we're eliminating that. When we talk about inclusion, we're talking about this umbrella. So we're opening it up to people. And I do believe you when you say that you're welcoming to everyone. I think that's the way we all, and I believe that that's in everybody's heart. So I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is people feel that it's going to move in a direction that is going to narrow things, when in fact, it's actually going to open things up. But it's not going to eliminate someone. If they want to be called she, her, him, that's not going to stop, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think it's the best decision, because you don't know. There might be one student in the district who feels comfortable with that. But that doesn't mean all the other ones aren't going to, don't have to refer to a pronoun that they're comfortable with. Me personally, I have my personal opinion about it too. I have a hard time between plural and singular because I'm so literal. That's just me. But to whoever it's important to that person, I feel that they should have, it's the option. It's having the option. And again, if that's the direction we're going in, I think it's the right thing to do to go along with stress estimate, because they are the number one in the entire state. That's not changing anytime soon. And I do believe that there might come a student or the parent who might feel that, their child is not feeling as comfortable as they could be for whatever reason. So I would support I would take the recommendation of stress estimate. And it does not limit things, it only expands things. Justina.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I guess my question was similar to what Ellen was asking, is that we change it in the policy, not for what reason, but what is the next step? Like, what does that help within the district? I mean, we're presenting test results comparing males and females. I mean, is that something that we no longer can do? But we do present it that way, and now we're changing all our policies to say he and she. So we're not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I kind of have a little bit of that disconnect. I don't see the reason, I guess, as to why we have to change the policy.
Okay, I appreciate that. Again, I think it's moving in the direction of this inclusion. Whether or not we're gonna now look at test scores and include something besides he and she, I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. I don't know.
Can I just add one more thing? That these policies are just changing on a rolling basis. They're not being changed just for the gendered language or non-gendered language. There's other content that's being changed in there. So I guess Strauss Esme's approach is, as we're already updating these, we're gonna include this language. So the other thing that the attorneys had mentioned were, they recommend taking their recommended policy language so that down the road, as they update other policies, the superintendent can kind of keep track of, and I don't know exactly how this process works, but then you're already in alignment with all of the Strauss Esme policies in a sort of sense. So there wouldn't be steps to go back and adjust. So it's sort of like it's been this way for a long time. We get the mandated language or the mandated policies from Strauss Esme with the recommended language, and we pass them as is, and then they sort of keep everything in their roles, if that's a good way to explain it.
For Strauss Esme, I mean, they're being safe. Their attorneys are saying, they make every single change. I mean, there's policies where the revision is like to capitalize policy, capitalize the P in policy. That'll be a revision because they notice the code is doing it. I sort of agree with Justina about how I think it's kind of it's a step to the next thing. And, because once they change the language and, stop you from using, stop you from, like, for example, using gender in a binary way, then that's gonna lead down the road, I think, to, if there are changes, I don't think the state's gonna stop with this. I just think it should be common sense. I mean, I remember back when we were discussing the sex ed, the new sex ed curriculum. Because I was on that committee, and the original curriculum, I mean, it was referring to students, we couldn't use boys and girls. It was referring to, like, persons or students with a uterus versus, students with a penis. And, wiser heads prevailed, and we went back to using boys and girls. I just think you can be polite to people without changing the language of it, and again, I think it's not inclusive because someone's always going to complain, but if you're going to get the complaints from people, or you're going to have displeasure from people who are, religious families who they don't want their son or daughter referred to as a they. What do you do about that? I just think the state is they're just creating a divisive issue for no reason that I can't even understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
One clarifying question?
Yeah. Do you have your thing?
Sorry. When we get the policies from Strauss Esme, do we just cut and paste and become our policies? And if we don't take their revisions that include the non-gender language, does that mean we have to go in and rewrite all the policies? How does it, are we causing ourselves more work by not going along with the policy that's written by the firm that we're paying a lot of money to write our policies? And then, does that make sense? Then why do we keep Strauss Esme if we don't use the policies that they're writing?
So the process looks like this for me. So one, Strauss Esme plays an important role because they monitor code and statute and even federal regulation updates. When that happens, they look to see if there's a corresponding policy that speaks to those updates, and then they'll send out those alerts. I talk about them as alerts. I don't monitor legal activity that happens in the state on a daily basis. That's what we pay them for. That's their job, because that's just not something that I do on a regular basis. So the trigger to me that there's been a change in a law somewhere is, Strauss came out with a new policy. This really helped inform, one of our more recent examples, informed some of our practice in the area of ESL even, how we service our students, our multilingual learners, right? Strauss, new laws came out, Strauss updated policy. We looked at the new policy and said, we have to update practices when it comes to how we service our multilingual learners. So that's the path, right? Law update, policy update, practice update. And I'll give, Mrs. Beagle will tell you, she knows, I'll give the stacks of policies to administrators, Jason as well, and say, review this, see if we're compliant or if we need to change practice. Sometimes Strauss offers options in those non-mandated policies. The district can choose from A, B, or C. What I generally do then is I'll go back to what we currently have, and some members of the policy committee have heard me say, well, we have this policy, we've selected option C, so I maintained option C unless the board wishes to change a different option. To answer your question though, the point is, yes, the more customization of policy that we do, the more we decide that the board or the superintendent edits policy, the more work it makes administratively. At some point, let's hope 20 years from now, I'm not gonna be here, many of you probably won't be here, and some superintendent is gonna be like, what in the world was that superintendent thinking when they customized this policy, because it's gonna be really difficult to track. So the more we customize, the more difficult it makes to track. When Strauss gives me the updates, they will literally bold and strike through the changes from the most recent revision. If policy 5570 was part of a revision in alert 200, they'll refer back to that alert and that adoption date, and then they'll update from there. So they do all of the tracking for us. So it would, logistically. Do I think that's a reason to or not change policy? It's really up to the board. There are things that we should customize. We should make work for Reddington. I firmly believe that, and we have. Most of the policy committee knows that I highlight things in blue when that's my signal that I'm like customizing something. I think the question here, and I wish I had a better explanation to Justina and Ellen in terms of like consistency around the district. I guess the only thing I can say is when it comes to, addressing students in a developmentally appropriate way, when I go into a kindergarten classroom, I tend to use the words boys and girls because that's appropriate for 6-year-olds. I just believe that, and I think that our curriculum reflects that. I think it gets a little bit more complicated when I walk into an 8th grade classroom. I think that I might be a little bit more deliberate with my language in an 8th grade classroom, and I understand that there's some dissonance there, and I wish I had a better explanation. I really do, because I understand the inconsistency part, and I think that I would like to ask the board to consider that this is a really complex issue that teachers and administrators and staff deal with on a day-to-day basis, and they do their best. We are not perfect, but everybody does their best to deal with it in the most respectful way possible. And I think finally too, my recommendation would be in order to do this in the most respectful way possible for our community, and to know that students that maybe don't identify as he or she would be to adopt policies, because policies apply to all children and all people in our community that use the non-gendered pronouns. I think it's a statement to our community that we are at least making the attempt. We may still get complaints, Randy. I know that we're not going to be perfect and we may not make someone happy, but at least it's the attempt to say we're taking the affirmative action forward to be consistent with code, but also adopt inclusive language. I think an act that says we're going to customize our policies to use gendered pronouns, which I don't have a problem with doing because we're not eliminating he or she. We're just including others who may not fall into the he or she bucket. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes, that makes sense to me. Because again, that was my point, is that we're not saying if a student wants to be called he, she, and if that parent, that religious parent wants their child referred to as he, she, that's not changing. That's the whole idea, is that you can be called the pronoun you want to be called. It's not that everyone's going to be called they. So it's just, again, expanding this possibility. It might only apply to 1 or 2 students, but it's the direction in terms of inclusion. And I think it's the right thing to do for the district, because once again, we're opening ourselves up to a potential unnecessary lawsuit that could happen.
I also don't know if there will come a day where when we report state test scores, we may have 3 categories. It might be male, female, other. It might happen. I feel for the student who has to bubble in that test form and pick one if they even have 2 to choose from. And honestly, the district test coordinator would know better than I would how that's categorized. But I think that, when we fill out a form to get our passport, whatever we're doing, right, I think that there's now a 3rd bubble. And I think that this is just an attempt of Strauss Esme to say, we recognize that there's a 3rd bubble now on that sheet. This is inclusive language. You are the policy-making body. I ask you to consider that, consider the recommendation, what everybody said. I just need guidance moving forward in terms of just logistically what we need to do moving forward, policies.
Okay, so anyone else? Any comments?
I just want to mention, at prior committee meetings, there was also an attempt to use more proper nouns to get to the same place of consensus. And I think that recently, more of the policies have had more changes, and that was no longer a viable option in terms of being grammatically correct. So I just wanted to share that that was another option that was explored in addition to the sort of two that we're discussing tonight.
And I'm happy to keep that as an option. I'll customize as much as possible. And I think several policies I've gone to customize with proper nouns and grammatically correct language as well, so that we still kept the inclusive language, but we also ensure that it was grammatically correct, right? Because we want to be correct. We want our policies to read well.
Thank you. So at this point, I honestly don't know if we're supposed to make a decision. I don't know if we're supposed to make a decision tonight, or we're supposed to do show of hands in terms of moving forward.
I have a wish.
You have a
This is my
wish.
wish.
Okay.
This is my wish and hope for all of you.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel like, I don't know if we will come to a decision, but we will have to adopt policy, right? We have to do that. I think that I need the guidance from the board of keeping the inclusive pronouns, the they, them, with the customization, making sure that it's grammatically correct, or some other alternative that the board wishes to see. In the interest of keeping us moving forward, because we have to adopt policies and they will inevitably have pronoun changes, where's the consensus of the majority of the board in moving forward? You talked about it, you have my recommendation, what would you like to do?
Okay, so should we, again, I'm just suggesting this, should we put a motion to either accept, this is again, just a suggestion, to accept the Strauss-Esme suggestions or not? Is that, or Randy, do you have a suggestion?
I don't even think it needs to be a formal motion. I think it just
Okay,
needs to
just
be
a
a,
conversation.
Dr. Hart,
Perspective.
here's the perspective of the board when you go to look at policies. That's, I need a perspective of the board though.
Right. So go ahead.
I mean, I just would like somehow for it to be inclusive of all. You know, those parents that are religious, that prefer to have he, she, those that fall into that third bubble. Like somehow if we can rewrite it to be inclusive for all and respect all, that would be my ideal end goal.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And I think that's what it's trying to do. I think that's what they're trying to do, is be inclusive. That's my understanding. Ellen, did you have something?
Yeah, no, it sounds like we all can compromise where it's, as long as it's grammatically correct. I think that's a compromise. I think the all sexes was something that I was having trouble agreeing with because it didn't read right to me. They were asking us to cross out both genders and replace it with all sexes, which to me, again, with consistency with what we're teaching our students in the science classrooms and in the health classrooms. So that was I think that was the one main point that we got hung up on, and the rest of it, we were willing, we were agreeable to compromise. I didn't see much issue there. Because a lot of it was the superintendent, they were removing like superintendents, like his or her designate, like it was like exhaustive anyway to remove that and, have it read smoother was okay to me. And then it was just that one part where it got to where it was replacing both genders with all sexes is where I was questioning the why, and it didn't read right or make sense to me. And I think Randy had suggested a good compromise would be to say, I think you said regardless of sex for that sentence. And I thought that read right was grammatically right and, was okay, but for some reason it didn't pass. So, that's when we said, let's bring this to the board. So I think if we all,
Again, I just think for the state to say all sexes instead of just both sexes. I mean, we're not even talking about gender, which I understand is a different concept. I get the argument that there's more than one gender.
Right.
But now the state's putting in these policies, there's more than one biological sex. We can't say both sexes, which to me is just, I'm sorry, it's just crazy. I mean, where does that lead? We tried to do I would have been on board with the compromise where we just don't use pronouns at all and just put everything in the plural. Or use the they, but make the subject plural. that seemed to fall out, and then we haven't been doing it. You know, the state could very easily do that, Strauss Esme could very easily do that, but that's not the point. They want to make it so that that singular person is called a they in the policies. I don't know how that's inclusive if you're not a they. I mean, should we do it he, she, they, he slash she slash they? Why don't we put that in every policy? You know, that's, it makes it very awkward to read, and the policies have already become very, very awkward to read, I think, because it's hard to write without using pronouns.
I just wanted to say something real quick. I agree with Randy. Being inclusive means everybody. Not having he, she can offend a lot more people than not. There's gotta be a way where we can say, we accept everybody for who you are, what you identify, without these changes in the policy. Or like the wording, I agree with wording, just, they should still have she, he, they, them. There's gotta be a way we can compromise.
Is that an option to do he, she, they? I don't know.
Anything is an option. We're just going to be customizing, that's all. It's just a matter of reading and rewriting, that's all.
Mm.
And it's fine.
How many pages of policy are there that would need to be rewritten?
I would not do them all at once.
But eventually, the idea would be they would
Yes.
all be done, and how many pages is that?
It really depends on the alert, and I can't answer that question.
Hundreds, thousands?
I probably read and we adopt almost 1,000 pages of policy, if not more, a year. I don't know how to answer that question. No, I can do it. I'll do it. It's fine. I'll customize it.
No, I'm just
I
asking
can
if
do
that's.
it, yeah. We have that.
Waste
I
of
mean,
time and money.
yeah, we have that. I've been doing my best to try to keep up with the previous discussion that Jen talked about with making sure that everything was grammatically correct. So as we do policies, I'll just look, when I review policies, I'll just look for these things, and I will do my best to customize, if that's what we'd like to do. I have no problem with that.
Well, if that's doable, I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
I will tell you if it becomes not doable, how's that?
Okay.
Let me just try it.
Want to try that?
Yeah.
Are we okay with that, everyone? Yes? No? Yeah. Should we go around the table? Let's just get a yes or a no if we're okay with customizing. Oh, is that the way? Again, I'm just trying to get everyone on board, honestly, if we should move in this direction.
I just wonder, instead of customizing,
Mhm.
could Dr. Hart's time be used in something else, like
Yeah.
something that really makes a difference to the educational achievement of the students, rather than spending a lot of time with words.
Or you just don't make the change at all. Strauss Esme gives us, we make every change except for the pronouns. That's even easier. That's not what half of us want, right?
That's still gonna mean a deliberate revision. I have to go back and undo the change that they made in the policy.
The easy thing would be to take what they write, we're paying them a lot of money, take what they write and move it into policy, except for those areas where there's something specific that,
Right.
you know, that we want to deal with, but not take every single policy. And we heard thousands of pages. Eventually will have to be rewritten so that we don't use the words that the law firm that we're relying on provides. We have to change them. It just seems like such a waste of time and money. I would rather be talking about educational achievement, not.
No, I would rather be too, believe me, but the state doing this. Why is the state,
But they
why is the
are,
state
and we
doing
can't
this?
stop them, so we can either.
But what, is there a reason for it? Who says we should use that? Who? I mean, where does this come from? They haven't even told us. Just, oh, this is what we're doing.
Well, again, if you're trying, for someone who wants to be called that's the reason we're doing it, for that inclusion piece. That's why we're doing it. So, I would support going with Strauss Esme, whatever they suggest, I think we should take. And that would be my position. I think it is, I agree with you, Carolyn, I think it's a waste of your time to go through all these policies to just, I think it's a slippery slope. What are we gonna try to change next? Either we accept them or we don't. It does not mean that we still can't use the pronouns that everyone is comfortable with. That's the whole idea of this. It's not really changing what already exists, it's adding to it, that's all it's doing.
Well, it is changing it because we're changing it today. And you made the comment that, you're concerned about any legal ramifications if we don't include they. But are we not concerned about the reverse? I mean, now we lose he, she, you can have a parent that's upset about that.
We're not losing he, she, that's the whole point.
But isn't that what we're doing in the policy?
Yeah, he or she is taken out. It's
Exactly.
replaced with they, them.
We can,
Yes, that's what we're
but a person
discussing.
can be called he, a person, if they want to be called he, they can be called he, just like a person
But
wants
it's
to be
not written
called
in the
they,
policy anymore.
can be
So
called.
your comment was that if we don't write they in the policy, we could potentially be faced with a legal situation, correct?
Yes,
So, but you don't think that we could possibly have a legal issue if we no longer have he or she in the policy?
no, I think that people, if they want to be called he or she, that's not changing.
But that's not what my question is.
Yes.
My question is that it will no longer read in the policy, so could we potentially have some sort of a legal issue with that, with somebody in the district?
I think that we just say that we cite the code and the statute where it came from. Could that not be the explanation? At the very least, right?
Strauss Esme didn't think we'd have a legal issue either way with this, right? They didn't see, they kept saying, they're being cautious and saying, just do what we say. It's easier just to do everything in the code, but they specifically say, because we talked about it. We don't see any legal exposure for this.
I'm reading their notes, they basically just say to be on the safe side. It doesn't say we have to do it.
There is no have to, and they made it very clear that there is no have to. It is their recommendation. That's their recommendation.
So it seems like there is a compromise on the table though, like where it says they, where it can encompass he or she, where it does, where it's plural, but where it's singular, then is that where we would do he, she, they? Because in the singular.
That sounds like what's proposed, yeah.
Yeah, I would never suggest eliminating he and she in any language at all. Because a lot of people want to be called he or she. Okay, so should we move in that direction? Or just, take it as is in the policy?
Can we take it policy at a time? As they come in, and because otherwise, why do we have a policy committee? If we're just gonna take Strauss Esme, like, why do we even meet as a policy committee if it's just, they're giving us stuff and we're plopping into the manual? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it should be one policy at a time. We revise it and we make sure it reads right, we make sure that it makes sense, and we make sure that it's inclusive of everybody. I think those are good rules to have as a board.
And there are times, I just want to make sure that there are times that you all know that, like, we do have options with policies, right? We have mandated policies, we have recommended, we have suggested, we have different, like, there are times where we are provided options and we discuss those options, we review those options, I go back and look to see what options we've included before. There are some policies that have some level of customization to them, just because of the nature of the policy, right? You can select different options. The he, she, they pronoun usage is not being presented in Strauss as an option. It's being presented as they, just to be clear.
Okay. So do we have to go back and change all the existing policies?
I'm not doing that, no.
Right, okay, we're talking
I
about,
want to be clear.
yeah, right,
Okay.
right. Okay, so we're talking
I
about,
just want to make sure that
that would be a lot more time.
yes,
We're talking about the current policies and moving forward, is that correct?
with alerts, yeah, I think that's what it sounds like, right? Like as we move forward.
Anyone else have any thoughts? No? Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's reasonable, it's not reasonable to perhaps someone to change it, but, you know, it's difficult. This is very difficult because if we're gonna do this for all kinds of policies, it could create issues. However, I think that saying he, she, they is kind of, everyone seems to agree on that, is that right? He, she, they,
Where it makes sense, yeah.
is that right? We're okay with that? Yes, so that seems inclusive at this point? Can we agree on that?
That might be minority opinion, I'm not okay with that. I prefer to adopt exact language from Strauss Esme. So I think they're making a deliberate effort to change language, and so obviously if that's the minority, if I'm in the minority, that's fine, but I'm not okay with that.
Okay, all right. All right. Should we have a show of hands as to who's okay with it and who's not okay with it? You want to try that? Let's do that. All right, so I guess it's either we're going to keep it the way it is, or we're going to go into, you know, consider this he, she, they. Is that a fair option that we're giving to the board? You know, just trying to be fair. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Well, when you say keep it as is.
Keep it as it is, meaning accept Strauss Esme's recommendation, or for policy moving forward, we do the he, she, they. So, is that an appropriate way to approach this? Just a show of hands.
This is just me thinking.
Yeah.
That would give me a path forward, it sounds like.
Okay.
If that was the question on the table, yes.
Unless it's 4-4.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right, so why don't we do a show of hands if you want to keep it. I'm sorry, did you want to say something first? Go ahead.
I think we appreciate the full board's input as a member of the policy committee, because you see the dilemma that we've been having.
Yes.
Because it's not even a this or that, there's so many different options and ways to find ways to be inclusive, be grammatically correct, and take the recommendations from Strauss, which by the way, are not always consistent. Like there's different approaches and different policies. So I just want to comment, I don't think that helps us get into a faster, better direction, but just to acknowledge that it's not as simple as it sounds, because we're not guaranteed to be getting that recommendation every time in every sentence. And then there's other changes, to Mrs. DePinto's point, where things change in other language.
Jen is right. We have not tackled the equity policy in terms of hiring practices, and we haven't tackled the word sexes and all sexes. So I have a path for pronouns. I have no consensus about the other issues brought up.
And I think as a policy committee, part of your job as a committee members is to read every policy and come forth with recommendations to the full board. So also like nothing is set in stone. It's just that
That's
we're
true.
looking for additional input because it's been ongoing discussion. So we'd like to get a broader perspective to see if we can directionally have a recommendation.
Thank you.
Hate to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, it seems like he, she, they is a good compromise.
Sure.
Is there any thought that we can go back to Strauss Esme and say maybe they can adopt it? So that, because I really, really would like to use what they give us, so we can be rewriting everything. It just seems like a big waste of time. But I do think he, she, they answers a lot of the issues people have. And it seems to be very much in line with the way, when you fill out your driver's license now, a lot of times you're, he, male, female, other, he, she, they. So maybe they would be willing to adopt that if enough people suggested it. And then we wouldn't have to change everything they're doing. I don't know if anybody's brought it back to them or if that seems like a reasonable suggestion.
I think, and I'm not them, I think that their answer to that would be that this is what's in code. The word "they" is in code. They are cutting and pasting from the code, putting it in the policy. And when they see the change from he, she to they are going to adopt the code language. I think that would be, at least based off of our conversation with them, I believe that would be what they would say. They are not going to make a recommendation that is not written in code, like the black and white of code. They're not going to issue that recommendation because they're responsible for 500 school districts. But if you as a board want to customize where you want to make a change, you could. That's me just speculating based off of the conversation we had with them. I think that's what they would say. It's in code. That's why they adopted the way it is.
Can I just clarify my point that my reasoning, my rationale for this, for going exactly with the Strauss-Esme language, is in consideration of your time, Dr. Hart. I would prefer to see you oversee academic achievement and everything else about running the district. And I do feel like it is a waste of your time and your intelligence to be doing this. So that's why I don't even think the he, she, they, while I understand it's a compromise, I still think it's a waste of time.
I appreciate you overestimating my intelligence.
Okay, and I'm just concerned about a slippery slope, because, kids are gonna be called what they're gonna be called, because that's what they wanna be called, and who even knows policy? I mean, ask any parent, how many times have they read, I don't know, they don't know much policy, and they don't spend their time reading it, I don't think. I don't think most people really care. We're making an issue of it, because for the language, it's kind of ironic in a way, but in any event, here we are, and I do appreciate, this is a struggle. I do believe that everyone is trying to be inclusive, and we're getting hung up on language, and I'm not, pointing fingers at anybody. It's unfortunate. I think we all want to land at the same place, but I'm just personally concerned about this direction and just keeping it simple. And again, I couldn't agree with Beth more how Dr. Hart should be spending his time, really, because it's not what we hired him to do. And we've hired Strauss-Esme to do this, or not, and.
I don't understand what's the time issue? Because a lot of these policies, they make all these revisions, and then there'll be like one change from, they'll cross out his or her and put in that. All we have to do is say, well, we're not gonna accept that change, leave it, or if we want to compromise he, she, they. I'm not sure. We're not like talking about sitting down rewriting like 6,000 policies. This is just one policy at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right.
Right? I mean, we're adopting a bunch of policies tonight that are, they're all changed. There's a couple of them that they cross out the his and her and put in that.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to do is take that out or customize it. I don't know. I'm not sure why that's a lot of time to do that.
No, I don't disagree with you, Randy. I'm just thinking that if we start questioning this organization that has done policy, that they're following code, I think that's a bad direction to go in general. I don't disagree with the, you want to say he, she, they, I don't think that's a bad idea,
They seemed fine with it. They seemed like it wasn't a big deal at the meeting. Like it was very much like, you're fine to do this,
Say what?
The work is on our side. They're fine with,
To me, I didn't get any feeling like they were like concerned that we would be making bad decisions and that we would be putting anything at risk. They pretty much gave us permission to,
Mhm.
compromise, come up with a compromise, and it would be okay. That they did not see us opening ourselves up to legal issues. So, and that's what I got. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I didn't.
Yeah,
I would never want to do anything
struggled
that would
over
put
the
the
minutes.
district in, harm's way.
I do want to clarify, because their then caveat after that, I don't see any legal exposure at the moment, was that down the road, they can see the state enforcing the language changes. So we could potentially be in the clear now if however we decide to do the pronoun use, But our comprehensive equity plan may require language changes, and our CUSAC report may require language changes. And then that is where work comes in. So policies that were changed now that are no longer in compliance to CUSAC in 3 years will then have to be re-updated with the correct language to comply with the state. So that is what I'm saying where the work comes in. If we're always in compliance with what Strauss Esme, because they are just copy and pasting from the state, then it's just makes Dr. Hartshell much easier.
Anything else? Any other comments? So should we try the show of hands again, just to do that? Go ahead.
No, I don't see why we need a show of hands. I'm fine with it, but like, we have now the discussion with the board, and I think we should take it as it comes in the policy committee, policy at a time, making sure that, okay, is everyone comfortable with the way this reads? These are our suggestions, and we have rules, I think, to follow as far as making sure the language is all inclusive, that everyone feels comfortable that it does include everybody. You know what I mean? And then it does follow the code. Like, I feel like we've discussed it, and we have, you know, kind of like a guideline for us in a policy committee.
Do you feel you
Is that
have
okay?
direction?
I'm comfortable.
You're
I
comfortable?
am, I'm fine. You don't need to straw poll. I'm good.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on.
So these two policies, will just go back again?
Yes, yes. But they don't have pronouns in them, they have other issues. So I will take, to Ellen's point, I will take what seems to be the guiding consensus and incorporate it in the policy, bring it to the committee, who now all understands the same guiding consensus, to bring it to the full board.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. And I do appreciate, and it's not, this is not easy, you know, so thank you for your consideration. Any other quick conversation regarding this policies at all?
With comments on the board, I would just wait till.
Yeah, does that come,
you
that
wait until the end.
that comes into public comment? Yeah, that's an open comment at the end. Yeah, thank you. We will do that. Anyone else here would like to comment on that? Okay. All right, maybe we got a roll call, please.
Mr. Pinto,
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Peach,
Yes.
Mrs. Bogorski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan,
Yes.
Ms. Bolt,
Yes.
Dr. Suso,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business that anyone would like to discuss? All right, moving on to new business from the board. We did have a green committee meeting, and we do have a committee report. Ms. Fiore?
Sorry, what about very loud? Yes, so the Green Committee met yesterday, which is why I didn't get minutes out until very late today. The first thing that we discussed was the Strategic Focus Action Plan. This is a plan that was put together for the 23-24 school year. And basically the committee identified priority areas that they wanted to work on and focus on for the year. So Mr. Bowen presented a slideshow of the accomplishments that were achieved during this year. The Green Committee focuses on 3 areas. Pillar 1, which is reduce environmental impact and costs. And the goals that were associated with that Pillar 1 were energy, which the solar expansion project is ongoing. And electric school bus and vehicle charging grants are also ongoing. The other goal that was under Pillar 1 is food waste, and we've had several challenges over the years, so that will also continue into the next year if the committee decides that that's going to be a priority for the 24-25 school year. Pillar 2 is improve the health and wellness of schools, students, and staff. The 23-24 goals were nature, and nature encompasses the importance of experiencing nature and being outside for the school community. I have a whole list here of the activities that were accomplished, and I mean, it's a long, exhaustive list. It's fantastic. Basically, there are projects and activities in every school, outdoor classrooms created, nature hikes, reflection and mindfulness activities. We've had partnerships with Rutgers Master Gardeners, at White House School. I mean, the list goes on in achievements in the area of green initiatives, and it's really amazing, amazing accomplishments for the district. Also under Pillar 2 was the goal to look at the wellness policies or any policies related to health and wellness of the schools. The board did approve the cell phone usage resolution, which is, social emotional health. So that was included as an accomplishment for this year. And the other policy, the wellness policy, which was reviewed once in the policy, Green Committee now looked at the wellness policy and would like to include some language from Sustainable Jersey for schools. And then I assume it'll be kicked back over to policy. And we should see that come before the board probably in the fall. The Pillar 3 is provide environmental education. The 23-24 goals were natural world learning, Sustainable Jersey, policy review, and the green coordinator. The natural world learning included activities like I had mentioned, the nature hikes, field trips, treks, furniture, which was encouraging recycling in the schools. The Eco Ambassadors put together so many programs and projects for refuse and recycling for their peers. They also did mini courses for the elementary schools. There were read alouds. There was curriculum focusing on geology and local community impact, wildlife habitat certification at White House School, different partnerships with the township, with the Open Space Committee, and the Water Watch Committee. The board we reapproved the sustainability curriculum and climate education, and these are embedding activities into student programs. There was the Taiwan delegation, which was a huge, wonderful accomplishment and opportunity for our students to have international members come to Reddington schools. Civic students are doing so many environmental projects. We had solar eclipse, we had a monitoring station for NASA, we had Eco Ambassadors at the middle school that were collecting data for NASA. These are just some amazing environmental education accomplishments. The other goals under Pillar 3, Sustainable Jersey certification. Next year is a certification year for the district. So there will be a lot of things coming before the board, potential policies to update to show our commitment to green initiatives. The policies goal, which was covered in Pillar 2, and then the green coordinator position, that has been vacant for the entirety of this school year. The job description was revised in December to align with Green Committee goals. So that is something I guess we'll look to continue, find somebody for the 24-25 school year, especially for certification to help us write the grant. Then the committee had brainstorming and ideas, an open kind of discussion with members. There was a suggestion to look at the action steps from Sustainable Jersey for schools for potential goals for next year. The committee members had other suggestions such as reducing mowed areas of schools if possible, continuing partnering with the green team and the township and the Water Watch committees. And then a suggestion was made for better communication to the community about green initiatives, which we know that we're working on the communication in general. And then we talked about the solar array expansion. Mr. Bohm gave us an update. Currently, the town planning board approved the first solicitation had failed, which we all know. The second solicitation is due May 21st. So we should, and we'll review that in that ad hoc finance green committee when those bids come in. The next steps, the proposals will be scored by that committee. The winning vendor will be board approved in the summer of 24, and then the construction would begin in 2025. And then after solar array, we had an update. Mrs. Betterman had given an update on the Charge EVC NJ study, which was a study on electric bus charging feasibility and how to help districts acquire electric buses and infrastructure. Additionally, there are resources through EV Driven program by Go Hunterdon, who is hosting a webinar on May 23rd for those interested. We talked about the local food for schools supplemental funding, and I think if you remember, during our Earth Day celebration last year, we were able to provide goods from local farms, and that was part of that local food for schools funding. Because we were involved in the program from the beginning, we were invited to continue to partner with Zone 7, which is a Hunterdon County farm. So there are more very good, exciting things to come for the district with that partnership. Next, Neil Hendrickson reported on the environmental resource inventory. This is a town initiative. It's active on the town's website. Teachers and students and the community are all invited to explore this extensive database of all the natural resources in Reddington. Ms. Adhikari and Ms. Freeman said they are both incorporating this inventory into their lessons, and they are encouraging other teachers to do so also. Lastly, we talked about the Hollenbrook Water Watch Committee partnership. Ms. Pouch and Ms. Adhikari are redesigning a 4th grade field trip for next year, and this is in conjunction with Reddington Township's Water Watch Committee. The new field trip will utilize open space in town and will align with the 4th grade science curriculum. And then the next Green Committee will be strategic planning for the board members on the Green Committee and the district administration. That happens over the summer. And then the general Green Committee will meet again in the fall. And that's what I have.
Wow, thank you. You guys are busy.
Yes.
But you only meet once every 3 months, right?
Yeah,
4 times a year.
quarterly.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Mrs. Fiore or anybody else? All right, thank you. Any other new business that we need to go over?
I just want to mention one thing, and Camille, I'm sorry that I was going to tell you, I meant to put this on the agenda. Last week, we attended the Hunterdon County School Boards Association meeting, where Gargi Adhikari was recognized for her achievement as the Hunterdon County Teacher of the Year. But it was also a really great meeting because both Beth and Jen received their awards from the School Boards Association as well. Certified board member, and
Certified
new board member,
Oh.
right, because
Still new.
you're still new because you're 3 years in. It was a great event with the exception of the traffic that I think prevented people from getting there. There was an accident on 78 or something like that, like a major accident. It was a really nice event. It was nice to see Gargi get recognized as well as Jen and Beth get recognized, and we got some pictures. I think I put them in the view, but I'll put them.
You did,
Not on
some nice
the
pictures.
next one.
You did.
But I just wanted to mention that, so congratulations. I didn't know if anybody was gonna mention it, I thought I would, because it was nice.
Thank you. And congratulations. Thank you. Okay, any other new business on the board at all? No? Good. All right, we are now open to the public for anything on or off the agenda.
Tom Curtis, White House Station. I just wanted to commend the board on the fact that you guys are dealing with, I guess, what could be considered a controversial issue, and you were able to come to a compromise, so very good.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Anyone else? No? Now we go to comments.
There's a couple comments. First from Corinne Christensen. Why would we move backwards by changing the language from all genders to both genders? What is the argument for this? And then the second comment by her, language is a leading indicator of inclusivity. Changing this language not only complies with attorney recommendations, but also indicates to everyone in our district that we include and welcome all. And then there's a comment from Joy Costagon. It's not about what's easiest. It should be all-inclusive to be respectful to everyone. People should be able to be referred to as he or she or they. If it needs to be customized, it should be. And that's all.
Thank you. And are there more?
Oh, I said he zoomed it in for you.
Yeah, we can just do this. Any anything else or any other comments? All right, okay. Can I get a motion to move to executive session? This motion is to adopt the following resolution. It's resolved to adjourn to executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law to discuss a HIB, legal matters, and the superintendent's evaluation for approximately 60 minutes, at which time the board expects to return to public session where action will not be taken. The matters discussed will be made public if and when the circumstances requiring confidentiality no longer exist. However, it is not presently known when such circumstances will exist. Can we get a motion?
So move, Beth?
Second, Carolyn.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. DePinto.
Yes.
Mrs. Fiore.
Yes.
Mr. Lopes.
Yes.
Mr. Beach.
Yes.
Mrs. Bogorski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
Dr. Seuss.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.